When you connect a keyboard or a mouse to an HID Remapper and you don't define any mappings, you leave everything as it is in the default configuration, the keyboard or the mouse still works as it normally would if it was plugged directly into your computer. All the keys and buttons work and the mouse still moves the cursor. This is because in the default configuration, the Unmapped inputs pass-through setting is enabled. It's here in the Settings tab. As you can see, it's a per layer setting, but let's ignore that for now. Let's only consider the default layer 0. When this option is enabled, HID Remapper goes through all the inputs that it's capable of sending to the computer. For example, all the keys on a keyboard, and for every input, it checks if there's an explicit mapping that has that input as the input. If it doesn't find one, it internally creates a mapping with that input as the input and the same input as the output. So for example, if there's no explicit mapping with the A key as the input, it creates a mapping like this. Input set to A and output set to A as well. Again, it does this internally. You won't see these mappings when you load the configuration from your HID Remapper. So when there are no mappings, like in the default configuration, it creates a mapping like this for all the keys or buttons and axes, depending on the emulated device type. A is mapped to A, B is mapped to B, C is mapped to C, and so on. So on an empty configuration, when you press A, your computer gets A. Because of these mappings, HID Remapper created automatically when the Unmapped inputs pass-through setting is enabled. If you disable the setting and don't create any mappings, then your keyboard stops working completely. No key will do anything. Okay, let's enable it again. What if we do in fact have an explicit mapping that maps the A key to something? Let's say we have a mapping that maps the A key to B. Then, because it only passes through unmapped inputs, this special behavior doesn't apply to the A key anymore. If A is mapped to something, then we don't want to work as A anymore, even with the pass-through setting enabled. Hopefully this makes sense. Note that the B key would still also work as B in this case. The pass-through is deactivated only when the key appears as the input in a mapping, not as an output. Let's take a closer look at the per layer nature of the setting. We currently have unmapped inputs pass-through enabled on all layers. And we have a mapping that maps A to B on layer 0. That means that the pass-through is no longer active on layer 0, but it's still there on layer 1 for the A key. Let's make it so that holding Shift activates layer 1. Save this configuration. If I press A without holding Shift, meaning that layer 0, the default layer, is active, we get B. But when I hold Shift, activating layer 1, now because there is no mapping with A as the input on layer 1, the pass-through is active and I get A. We can try disabling the unmapped inputs pass-through setting on layer 1. Save the configuration. Now when I hold Shift and press A, we get nothing. Hope this makes sense. if you want all inputs passed through, except for a few special ones, you can always create a mapping like this. Let's say we want all the keys to work normally, except for the Windows keys, which we want to do nothing. We can keep the unmapped inputs passed through setting enabled and make a mapping that maps the Windows keys to nothing. The Windows keys are called left GUI and right GUI here. And of course, if you want only a few keys to work normally and the rest of them to do nothing, you can disable the unmapped inputs passed through setting and create explicit mappings like this with the same thing as the input and as the output for all the keys that you want to work normally. An important thing to keep in mind here is that HID Remapper can only send the kinds of inputs that exist in the currently selected emulated device type. If this is set to mouse and keyboard, and you connect a joystick or a gamepad to your HID Remapper, then it will not transparently pass the inputs from the joystick to the computer, even with the unmapped inputs pass-through setting enabled. You would have to set the emulated device type to, say, switch gamepad. And then, of course, if you connect a keyboard, it will not transparently pass the inputs from the keyboard to the computer. Okay, that is it for now. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thanks for watching.